Ladies and gentlemen, Wildlife 100. So where did you grow up?
I grew up on the east side of Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up on a road that's called Boulder Crest Road. A lot of people that's from this city should be familiar. You know what I mean? It's a well-known hood out here. But yeah, I was born and raised over there. You know, for the majority of my upbringing. But I moved around everywhere. You know, like I went to like 10 different high schools out here.
Damn, dog.
You know what I mean? Straight up. You feel me? So I know some of everybody. You
Okay.
feel me?
To the best of your knowledge, who were some of the gangs that were present in ATL before Crips and Bloods came along?
Before the Crips and the Bloods, it wasn't in Atlanta. I can't say it was too many gangs. You know, the GDs had a real standing out here. You know what I mean, for a minute. You know, I knew about them for a long time. You know, even before the Crips and the Bloods. But for the most part, it down here it was like just cliques. You know, just had some called Black Mob, some called the Fam. You know, they used to beef with each other. You know what I mean? And it was actually big. You know what I mean? But we didn't really do the gang banging until a certain point in time.
I've talked to a couple of gangsters in Louisiana, and they said that pop culture like Lil Wayne, Mac 10, people like that had a big influence on bringing Bloods out to Louisiana. Do you know if there's any story behind, you know, any type of something behind that in Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Atlanta, I know OG Troop came down here and did what he did for the 60s. You know, he from the South Side, or he migrated to the South Side. I'm not sure where he's from. He might be from the land, but he migrated to the South Side, and he really put the 60s out there in Atlanta. You know, like Gunna, he a 60s, Lil Baby. You know, all these niggas, that's where they come from. OG Troop from down here in the city.
How about you? How old were you when you personally heard anything about Crips or Bloods?
When I personally heard, when I heard something about the Crips, I was pretty young. You know what I mean? It was I say about middle school, you know. But when I actually got involved, I was about 14, maybe 15 years old.
Okay.
You know, but before that, you know, I was hearing little stuff. You know what I mean? You see them around, things like that. You know, because you don't really know what's going on at the time. You know what I mean? It's just happening.
Okay. And you said you were 14. What led you to join the Crips?
Well, shit. When I was 14, we moved from where we were staying at the time, and we moved to another apartment on like the let's see, it's like the upper end of Atlanta. You know what I mean? But when we moved over there, we basically stayed in like a trap house, you know, and the trap was ran by Crips pretty much. You know what I'm saying? They was just everywhere. You know, like it was young niggas, it was old niggas, you know what I mean? It was like this was their territory, you feel me? And at the time, I'm guessing, you know, that was the best that my mom could do. You feel me? So I just ended up in a situation where I was around nothing but Crips. You feel me? So I started hanging with these niggas. You know, and the crazy part about it is I was the only one that actually went to school. At my whole set, I was the only one that actually kept going to school back then, at least. You know, a couple homies went back and all that shit like that. Mm-hmm. But back then, and them niggas used to encourage me to do so, you know what I mean? Because back then, man, we had 14, 15-year-olds robbing stores and all type of shit, you know? It was gangster, you know? Mm-hmm. When that gangster shit came down here, it came down. The thing about Atlanta, though, it's like, it's so, when it did happen, it was so watered down. You know, you had so many niggas coming from so many different places claiming to be so many different things. You know what I mean? And that's why a lot of people feel like we so watered down, because to an extent we was. You know what I mean? We had a lot of big homies out here that wasn't really big homies, leading a lot of young niggas astray and shit like that. You know what I mean?